there everyone, Jeremy Brown here with another how-to video. So even though this is another how-to video, it's more of a tips. I had a viewer on YouTube request information regarding the Fast Tracks turnouts. Now Fast Tracks themselves have some really good videos on their website. So what I'm going to show you is some of the things that I do that may or may not help speed things along. I just find they work for me. Maybe they'll be able to help give you a tip, or might be able to take a couple of the tips and be able to maybe help your fast track process. If you're brand new to Fast Tracks, definitely look at their website. In my opinion, probably the absolute best turnout you can have on your layout is a Fast Tracks turnout. Yes, it does take time to build it. The initial investment of things such as the jigs and the form tools, yeah, they're a little expensive. But again, it's just like anything in this hobby. It's an investment and it's a hobby. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a few things that I have that help me out. I guess I'll just kind of start from right to left. I use some of the things I get these files. They're emery boards, whatever you want to call them. This one is, they call it fine, 400, 600. You get these over at Sally's Beauty Supply. The pink one is fine. A blue one is like a medium, which, oh, look at that. I have one here. And then the black one is coarse. They're always the same color there. They have them in a little bit different sizes. I get the bigger ones. But anyway, Sally's Beauty Supply. And I'll show later where I use the pink ones, the fine ones for. Just a standard soldering iron. I use a 40 watt. This is an old Radio Shack, which you can't get anymore. That's how old this thing is. Yeah, works great. I do not use a sponge for soldering. I use I'll put a link in Amazon for a few of these things here. A link down in the description. I buy this stuff from Amazon. It almost looks like a scrubby that you would have at the kitchen sink for scrubbing dishes. Yeah, this way, when you clean your soldering tip, you can just poke it in there and just give it a little turn. But a sponge that's wet will cool your tip down, so you got to let it come back up to temp again before you even solder. This way, you don't have to. And you don't have to always get it wet. The things I use this acid flux. This stuff is used for soldering copper pipe on plumbing. Do not use this stuff for electronics. It will corrode copper. But I use it for doing Fast Tracks because I do clean the turnouts before I put the ties on. And the rail is always dirty and the copper is not exactly pristine either. And they're fairly clean, but this stuff will help really clean your solder joint as you're putting it on. And like I said, we're cleaning them anyway. So this stuff you'll find at Home Depot, Lowe's, in the plumbing section. Only use it for this. Do not use this for feeders or any other electronic soldering. Okay, I don't know if Fast Track still sells these. I believe they do. These tie breakers. These things are awesome. Instead of putting your ties down and measuring them either on your jig or on a paper template, like this curved turnout here, these things are awesome. I labeled one as a hinged, and the other one, let's see, we've got hinged point and a spring point. I do all mine in spring, so you never need to put one in the H, especially if you're doing like number 6s or number 8s turnouts. But yeah, you can just put your PC board ties, cut them off the sprue there, stick them in, cut them all off. Then I use the file, clean off the tops, and this really helps speed up the process in that. This is one thing I don't think they even sell this anymore. I got a lot of this stuff back in 2009. So this is just a little thing that they could get that you could put your um, Allen wrench in for your point form and stockade tools to be able to open and close those. Normal things, NMRA gauge. Yeah, I have one of those handy. I've also got a Code 83 micro engineering gauge here as well. Um, you know, if you're gonna have to go through and try to decide for yourself how many fast tracks you're gonna be making, how many turnouts you're making, and then base off of that, how much of the investment you want to make into making these. Um, you're only making a couple of them. Yeah, use a paper template. You can do that. However, yeah, these jigs are worth their weight in gold and make the process a lot easier. If you're doing this the standard number 6 or number 8 turnout or 10, 12, um, you don't necessarily need the rail roller. But if you're making curved turnouts, this thing is almost a must. I have several different curved turnouts, and this thing makes the job real easy. You just start out a little bit by just rolling your rail back and forth, and then you can increase the tension with when you turn this knob. It pushes this further up. It puts more of a bend into your rail until you can get it close enough to fit your jig or your template, and then and then that way you're not sitting there with your fingers constantly putting pressure on it just to get it to the right one. Where this will do a nice job with that. So this is a really good investment. Stockade tool, get this thing. This thing is really it's worth it. Again, another tool that's worth its weight in gold. Um, I highly recommend getting the Stockade tool. This one here is for Code 70 and Code 83. All my turnouts I'm doing in Code 83, by the way. All right, that should cover it pretty much for any additional tools. And then I'm going to go through and build one. Oh, one other thing too is I will build, and I'll go over here and grab, I got a couple of them here. I'll build about 5 or 6 of these at a time. I've got a 60-33 curved turnout here. This is just a number 6. Like I said, I'll build about 4 or 5 of these, maybe 6, just depends. And then I will go wash all these and let them dry as I make more. And I just do it an area at a time. I make a list, go off my track plan, and based on, like in this case, I'm right now in the process of building these turnouts for Colorado Springs. I have a couple miscellaneous ones. I just write down a list of all of them that I need, and then I just start checking them off as I get done with them. And then I, once I get this list done, then I know I can actually start working on installing those. So that's very handy. So that way you know what to make next. Oh, another thing. These are Harbor Freight Special. This is a steel wire brush. This one's a plastic one. And there are there's 3 different ones in a kit at Harbor Freight. There's a brass one in here too. I don't use it for this application. I use the plastic one for scrubbing when I clean the turnouts, and then I use the metal wire one for cleaning different parts, such as the guide rails. Once I get done filing the ends, just to clean them up a little bit, I'll use that for there. So that's a nice another tool. Another thing is also at Harbor Freight, they have these little tools. There's 4 of them in a pack. I only use the one that looks like an ice pick, just a straight point. I use this for picking out the PC ties, and I'll show that too. All right, so I've got the frog points, or the frog rails there, soldered together. And this is where the pink file comes in handy. What I'll do is you can kind of see there's a little bit of solder there sitting on top of the rail. I'll use the file to clean that off. All right, so I'll file it right there in the jig, and you can see where, yeah, now we got a nice clean rail on the top, and the solder is there holding the points together there for the frog. If you're your first time users, you're going to want to print off, in this case I've got the number 6 turnout here that I'm building. You're going to want to, I'm going to turn this around a little bit. You're going to want to print off the template, so that way you know exactly where you got to put your gaps in your PC tie. After you made a few, you get it memorized. But what I do is I look at the template, then I actually will mark on the jig exactly where those lines are supposed to be. And then that way, as I keep making them, I'll know I won't have to keep looking at the template. I can just then look at my jig. Yeah, ultrafine point, Sharpie to make my marks for the isolation gaps. Now, I highly recommend, and I believe Fast Tracks also, using a triangle file to cut these isolation gaps in. I've gotten to the point to where I actually use my Dremel. I got a variable speed Dremel, and I use the diamond blade on it, and I'll show that to you here in a second. All right, so here is my Dremel diamond cutoff wheel. Oh, they're about 14, 16 bucks, but they're worth it. I use this for cutting all the gaps in my rail, along with the gaps that will need to be cut in the turnout itself. Remember I mentioned about the ice pick tool here. This and how to pick these things out. So I just basically stick it in between the jig and the PC board and just pop it up a little bit. It's kind of tough doing it one-handed, but you get the idea. Anyway, you just put it in the edge in here, and you just kind of pop the PC tie right out of the jig, so that way you can score them all and move on to the next process. Okay, I just got done putting in, I'll just say, the pocket for the point rail. And as you can see here, the rail's a little bent. That usually happens after doing it. This is where the stockade tool really is handy for putting these in. So the file I was talking about earlier, the pink one, I'll use that to file off the bottom of the rail, and also that pocket I just got done cutting with the file, just to clean it up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll show you the difference. Okay, we got it cleaned up. Hopefully it will focus on this. You can see. Maybe if we go to the white, it'll help out a little bit better. Yeah, it's really having a hard time focusing in. But anyway, that will clean that pocket up real nice. I'm going to actually put it down on the ground. Let's see if we can zoom in. There we go. Anyway, now that's all nice and clean. And your point won't have any problem going up against that stock rail there. Okay, I'm getting ready to solder this piece of rail in, and I've got flux. I just get it and I just dab it a little bit with this brush. These are the brushes you'll find where the air brushes are. You'll find them at your, well, they wouldn't necessarily be where the air brushes are for your hobby store, but these blue ones, they come in a pack of, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 of them. Anyway, the bristles, I'll cut them halfway off, and then I just use the same one all the time for just dabbing just a little bit of flux right there where I'm going to be soldering the rail to the PC board tie. Okay, I'm going to try to solder one of these and videotape here at the same time. I'll show you the process. I mean, it's not just a matter of just, soldering it, but I'll show you what I do. Basically, is I kind of put the soldering iron on the PC board tie. I'm going to try to get up so I can get, I'll put it down here just for a second, just enough to put a little bit of solder, and then I jump up and then heat up the web of the rail and then swipe back down. And then that'll get you, I'm trying to solder this by using the camera, watching the screen at the same time. So we'll zoom in and you kind of get the idea of what I do. All right, let's see if we can you can see kind of what it looks like. I may have got a little bit too much extra solder on there. You don't need very much. There's one that's done. And I've got the one there I got to do yet. But yeah, I just put a little bit on the PC board tie, then bring the soldering iron tip up to the web of the rail. Let that heat that rail up because you want that solder to kind of go, work its way a little bit underneath that rail to the PC board tie, and then kind of drag it back down along the PC board tie towards you, and then that'll give it a kind of a nice, see it's going out of focus. There we go. It'll give you a nice little transition. Here's another little tidbit information. When you're building these turnouts, if there's ever a spot that's going to be coming out of gauge, it's going to be right here. It's not so much on the number 6 or number 10 turnouts, but definitely on a curved turnout. You got to make sure you push the rail here, right up against the edge of the jig here. Otherwise, when you measure the gauge between here and your point over here, it's going to be out of gauge. It'll be too tight, and then your locomotive and your cars will derail. It'll end up jumping it. So I'll go ahead and solder this, and then what I'll do is I'll bring the soldering iron and I reheat the solder joint here, and then use my screwdriver here to basically, from the inside of the rail, back here where the pocket is that you cut out with a file, and I'll put a little bit of pressure here to make sure I get it all the way over. You don't, and that's only on the diverging, the diverging stock rail. Never have an issue with the normal route here. That one always seems to do really good. Whatever the rail is that's the diverging one, that's where I usually have a problem, is right here, that it ever is out of gauge. Okay, I've got the point rail here that I've filed down in the point form tool. Now I'm going to go ahead and use the file again to clean this rail up. And then I may have actually filed it too much, but we'll see, and I'll show you why. Okay, I got done cleaning up this point rail, and I filed it way too much in the point form tool. I don't need a needle here. And you can see right here where the web of the rail is actually started to rip off of the bottom. There we go, you can actually see. So yeah, there, you see where there's a gap there at the very end of the point? There we go. Yeah, so this is actually no good. I could actually, if it's not too bad, I could probably cut it off here and clean it up. And this may still work, I'll have to see. When you're filing this, put your finger back behind your point like this. That file is so fine, it's not going to hurt your fingernail. Or not your fingernail, your fingerprint, your skin there. That way you don't bend this point. These points are very fragile, especially if you get them too thin like I did here. So I'm going to see if I can save this just for the video. All right, so I cut off the bad end, and I had just enough rail to actually refile this. So I put it back up in the point form tool. You want to put your rail right to the edge, so that way you don't see any of the black. I'll show you on this side here. You see where you got this darkness right here? You don't want your rail exceeding right here. You want to just slide it till it gets right up to there, and then lock it down. All right, so let's file this one, and then rinse and repeat. Okay, so I refiled it and cleaned it up again with the emery board, and that is a lot better. If you'll notice, down in here, you don't have that breakaway. You can't, where the web is basically broken off from the base of the rail. So this one will definitely work. So I'll show you a little bit here with this rail roller, rail bender. So I've got a little bit of tension on there. You can see right here how much it looks like. Oh my goodness, I'm putting a heck of a bend in it, but honestly, you're really not. And then you take the tension off, and then you can pull it back out. I just want to put a little bit in there for this turnout. Okay, you'll see here I now have the normal route rail. I guess I'll call it that way. I've got that soldered in. I went ahead, I put let's call it a bevel here on the end for the guide rail here, this part of it, and then I've got this soldered in. Now it's time to, if you look at this part here, we're gonna solder the point only on the normal route, not the diverging route or the reverse route right here. This point, that one we'll do that rail later. But we're gonna go ahead and do this one. Now what I do is I actually stick a piece of paper, and I'll show you here. I'll set it up and then I'll show you. Okay, you see I now have a piece of paper here that goes between the main rail here and the point. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to actually put a little bit of flux right here onto the point and then onto the throw bar. And then I'm gonna put a blob of solder right here. So I'll do that and then we'll come back. All right, I'm gonna see if I can do this live here. I'm gonna clean my tip. Hopefully I don't get in the way because I can't see what I'm filming. All right, so we've got the flux here. We've got a pool of solder here. I do that because I want to be able to get the screwdriver to not just push the rail back, your point back, but also push the point down. The paper here will keep the solder from going over to my stock rail over on this side here. So I'm just gonna heat up the solder and just quickly bring it up to the point and then pull my soldering iron away. Once you're done with that, go ahead and pull the piece of paper out, and then you'll want to lift up just a little bit, just to make sure, just like that it's flexible, that it actually didn't solder to the stock rail here. So we're good. We got a good point there. Now we'll go ahead and do the other one. Currently I have everything installed, all the rail soldered to where it needs to be. And the last thing I'm doing is putting the diverging point onto the throw bar. So you can see this is kind of a convoluted setup. I'm not exactly sure how Fast Track shows how to do it. I'll just show you this is what I do. I just put one of my point form tools there on as a weight. Then I use my NMRA gauge. Most of the time, you can use the points gauge that's on here. A lot of times I just do the flange way. So I'm going to get up real close in here. There we go. I've already got flux in there. I've got the solder. I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did on the other point. The other thing too that you want to try to keep in mind, I need to make a gauge for this, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. You want to make sure that you keep your throw bar straight, because right now it's only connected by this point right here. So the distance between this tie and your throw bar, you want to keep that exact. That way it fits in the quick sticks nicely. So you may need to adjust it as you're getting ready to solder. But we're going to do the same thing. We're going to get the screwdriver. And in this case, instead of pushing it back, I'm just going to hold it down like this. Draw the solder over to the point. Just let it touch real quick and then pull the soldering tip away. Okay. That's basically what it looks like when it's done. You'll want to run your finger you want to move your points. Yeah, my finger. Okay, solder job is done. The verging point is in. You're going to want to make sure that you rub your finger, move the point one way or the other, rub your finger across here to make sure there's no real sharp. It should be nice and smooth transition when your point, I'll just say, is in the point, in that little pocket, I'll call it that, when it's up against the rail. If it isn't, you can push it off and move the throw bar so you get a little bit of separation. Then use your file just to clean up. Just run it gently over the inside here of that point, and then it'll start. There may be a little burr there, but usually there isn't. Also, go through the whole thing, check it with the NMRA gauge, make sure it's in gauge. Beyond these ties, don't worry about it. The gauge will be off. So the next step is I will go upstairs and clean these. I can show a little bit, but I mean, it's basically using the plastic toothbrush here. I'll turn the kitchen sink on to get the hottest water possible. I'll rinse it under the hot water. Use a little bit of Dawn dish soap. Use Dawn because it cuts the oil and it'll clean that residue flux right off. And then I just scrub this. I try to get in between, basically going along the rail. Be very careful at your points. Only go with, I'll say, with the point. Don't go against it. You could really easily damage your points by doing that. So always go with it. And then it would come time for a quick stick. Okay, I'm just got this quick stick. I haven't cleaned it yet, but I'm just using these quick sticks here for illustration. Yeah, you'll see here, see the throw bar? If you make it nice and straight, it'll fit in there just nicely. All right, if you're using a hinged or a springed points, depends on if you have to, which one of these ties you have to remove for the PC tie, whether it's here or down here. But I think they have that in their instructions. All right, so once you've got the plyo bond on both the rail and the PC or the quick sticks, which by the way, that takes practice. So don't worry. For some reason, that stuff really likes to all of a sudden, one moment it won't be coming out of the tube, and then next thing you know, you got way too much. So you really want to be careful with that down here on the points, because otherwise your points will stick. So, one thing I did forget to add. Before or you could do it before or after. I usually do it before. You're going to need to cut your isolation gaps at the frog. And they show that, yeah, so in this case with the number 6, they're cut here and they're cut here. So I will cut those after I wash it. I will, use my Dremel diamond cutoff wheel and cut those isolation gaps in. All right, now we're back to the plyo bond. This is where this track gauge comes in. You'll want to use that on this part of the rail. Then you're going to have your soldering, and they show you this. They'll have your soldering iron. You'll want to put it into the web of the rail as you're moving this along and putting a little bit of pressure down. The heat from the soldering iron will cure the plyo bond, and then that way this turnout will stay engaged as that plyo bond completely cures while when you're hitting it with the soldering iron. So that's where this gauge comes in to play. All right, I think that's everything. If you've got questions, please put that in the comments, and I will do my best to answer it if I can. And if you've got other things that you see on the layout videos that you're like, oh, hey, how did he do that, or what did he use for that? Feel free to put a question in there, and I'll see what I can do to either do a video or definitely answer the question. Thanks again for watching. Hope you're able to learn a little bit, and happy modeling.